7. Also, before buying this book, I saw, like, someone describing the Laws of the Skies as kind of like, Winnie the Pooh meets, like, a massacre in the campground. Where is it like Winnie the Pooh? Because listening to this, I was so confused. Can somebody explain this to me? So Sandra looked at Enzo in pure horror, thinking about he won't know how the story ends. As Enzo was like stabbing her. Stabbing in the neck. Look at all this blood. That went in really easy. I wonder if I stabbed her in other places, if it will go in just as easy. Leg. Stomach. Head. Arm. Armpit. And she's like, all she's thinking about as she's bleeding out is like, will Elliot save this boy? Oh, this story, like I couldn't finish the story. Even I don't know how it ends. How will Enzo know? Also, I can't believe I'm literally not even thinking of my own daughter as I'm dying. Like, that's crazy. Imagine, I'm dying, and I can't even, like, think of Jade right now, like my own child. I can't even think about, I'm thinking about her right now. There we go. I'm thinking about you, Jade. I love you. Yeah, my husband might not know where I am right now, but I love you, Jade. And right after Sandra died, Enzo stabs her right in the eye and, like, plays with the little eyeball wound. He just, like, digs his fingers up in there and he's like, oh, there's something shiny there. Is this where the human soul is kept? Ew. And of course, at figuring out that, yes, the eyeball wound does not contain the human soul, he went big sad. So now we go back to the 3 poisoned children, and they died violently on the ground. Jade and Hugo didn't let go of Lilu and Raphael's hands even after they started going cold because they were just traumatized. They sat there holding the dead children's hands until they sat there and, like, they fell asleep. And when Hugo woke up, Jade was not there anymore. He began to freak out, calling her name. She literally was just here. She was literally just here. Where did she go? So Hugo got up and began to run into the woods looking for Jade. Jade, where are you? And Enzo laughs. I think she had a little accident, Batman. Ah! Hugo, infuriated knowing that Enzo killed Jade, Hugo ran into view, seeing Enzo and also seeing the massacred body of Jade. Her body was similarly described to the scene in Midsommar, you know, my favorite movie, where I believe it was the scene where the guy was suspended with his rib cage ripped open. I think they call that the flying eagle. Don't quote me on that. But her eyes were gouged out, oozing red and black fluid. Her, like, midsection was, like, ripped open and just blood everywhere. Intense. She's 6 years old. Enzo's 6 years old. The dead children are 6 years old. Hugo saw red and, like, ran full speed and body slammed Enzo hard, knocking him back on the ground, and immediately Enzo was, like, knocked unconscious. And Hugo was mad that he didn't die immediately like everybody else. So Hugo, in a stupor of anger, I think it was described that they were, like, near the campsite. So Hugo walked back into camp and, like, noticing that everything was ransacked of food. He was hoping that there was snacks left, but Enzo took it all. He went into all the backpacks, all the tents, and, like, stripped them of shoelaces, belts, parachute cord, anything that could tie Enzo up. He grabbed everything. He tied Enzo up with ropes, belts, laces, backpack straps, everything, before he could wake up. And he left him there. So since Hugo was back in the camp, he realized he needed Fred's phone. So, noticing Fred's bashed body, trying to ignore the smell and how grotesque it looked, Hugo went into the pockets of Fred to discover that the phone was gone. He didn't know where the phone was. He didn't even think to check Enzo's pocket, who was still tied up, unconscious, and left behind. Hugo, tired, delirious, starving, traumatized, exhausted, began walking back to the road and heading towards the actual road. Heading out of the woods to the road. And as Hugo went further and further into the woods, eventually he began hearing Enzo screaming bloody murder. But Hugo just kept walking. Now, this portion of the book was probably the most unsettling if you weren't prepared for it. I listened to it like, ooh. So we go into the scene of a wild boar waking up from his nap in the morning. He got a whiff of food nearby, and he stumbled into camp. Enzo kept a couple cookies and wrapped goods in his pockets. Now Enzo is still tied up, to the T. This wild boar was sniffing around Enzo's body and began chewing on his pockets. But the wild boar began eating through his pants, taking chunks out of his thighs to get to the snacks. And then, of course, once the wild boar tasted blood, he began eating Enzo from thigh up. This little boy screamed and screamed, just screaming at being eaten alive by a giant pig. And this is a point in the book where the story turns to the narrator. Dear reader, as the narrator, I must try to convey what it's like to be consumed alive by a wild boar, and you, describing the scene to you as you're 6 years old, immobilized by ropes, a waking nightmare of being consumed, what that feels like to you, the pain, the mental anguish. We will begin to describe this to you, to quote the book. So Enzo going in and out of consciousness from the head wound, and as well being ripped open alive. This multiple 100-pound boar began stepping his full weight on Enzo's body as it tried to climb over and get the soft parts of him. And in the mind of a 6-year-old, not understanding that this excruciating, flesh-ripping pain could be the pinnacle of agony. It described the smell of the boar, the wet fur, the dandruff, the breath, the smell of blood, the smell of you, the taste of your own blood, the sounds of the grunting and the animal noises as it's scuffling and eating you. You hope that it gets over. But as the boar climbs off of you, it grabs a hold of your sleeve and begins tugging your arm violently, ripping your arm from the socket, tearing your entire arm off. You watching this animal eat your dismembered limb. The screams that come out of your tiny 6-year-old body. But as you scream, the boar grows annoyed at the noises you're making, so it gets up in your face, ripping at your lips to shut you up. But as you still scream because you're literally being torn open, it grabs a hold of your face and rips you around violently, tearing off your face. Starts with the lips, tears your lips off, then it tears your nose, and it tears your whole face off. The boar rams its whole body into yours, jamming its head into your stomach and gut to shut you up because you're still making noise. You don't need a face to scream. You don't need lips to make noise. As you sit there, death would be peaceful. You wish for death, but you still survive. About this time, this is when the bus driver noticed that the kids were not gathered to get picked up on picking up day. The police scour the whole campsite trying to find all the kids, and they stumble upon every body. Noting this bizarre discovery of death and chaos, nobody really knows when Enzo died. Was it when the boar devoured his brains? Or was it after that? Who knows? They found Hugo collapsed on the dirt road close to the road in a ditch. He died. And that's the end. Yay.